Chapter 31, Perfection. The young lad's cooking skills are getting better and better, said the old man with a hearty laugh. I've been fishing my whole life and have long since grown tired of fish. But the fish dishes that the kid makes are something I could still eat. Feng Boping laughed heartily, flicked his sleeves, and took the lead to sit on the large rock next to the pot. With a wave of his hand, a cup and jade chopsticks appeared in his palm like picking flowers. Although he and Li Mushu shared similar tastes, there were certain differences between them. Feng Boping was somewhat finicky about cleanliness and had a fondness for beautiful jade, using luxurious bowls and chopsticks even for eating, which did not pale in comparison to the royal clan within the court. He handed Li Hao a clean pair of bowl and chopsticks with a smile, yet did not bother Li Mushu, instead quietly awaiting the boiling pot. Li Hao estimated the time was about right, then flipped the lid over, setting it aside on some leaves. The rich aroma burst forth immediately. Ignoring the usual courtesies of elders first and children last, he reached straight in with his chopsticks to grab some meat. "You guys wait for me!" exclaimed Li Mushu as he hurried over, hastily fashioned a pair of chopsticks from a twig, and began stirring in the pot. Although Feng Boping was particular about cleanliness, he didn't say anything about Li Mushu's actions. Li Hao felt this was probably the feeling of lifelong camaraderie. The three of them ate with great relish. Despite the significant age difference, neither of the two older men pulled rank on Li Hao. Sometimes you would call me kid, and I would call you old man, showing carefree personalities. I didn't expect you to bring out new tricks in cooking fish. Li Mushu, after drinking a mouthful of spicy soup, clicked his tongue in appreciation. Li Hao smiled. Indeed, in the past 6 months, his self-taught drawing and cooking had both steadily improved, reaching the second level. So had his fishing Dao. Maybe there really was something to the newbie protection phase theory. In the first month, his fishing success rate was extremely high, but now it seemed rare to catch anything. Sometimes he would even stay up until midnight, forced to find a shallow spot and catch a Power Passage Realm demon fish to avoid returning empty-handed. As they talked, suddenly, Li Hao's gaze darted toward the fish bladder, which was gently touching the water surface. There was movement! He swiftly put down his bowl and chopsticks and crouched, rushing over to the fishing rod. Right at that moment, the fish bladder suddenly plunged underwater. Li Hao quickly set the hook and pulled on the line, which immediately tightened on the other end, transmitting a tremendous force. A massive commotion came from beneath the water as well. This kid. The two elders seeing this both revealed a hint of envy. They couldn't believe this youngster had gotten a bite first. Soon, the commotion under the water grew stronger and a demon beast emerged from the surface. It was not a fish demon, but a shrimp demon with a hardened shell. It was 4 or 5 meters long, covered in spikes, with fearsome pincers capable of crushing rocks. At that moment, the shrimp demon was grabbing the fishing line with its pincers, its bulging eyes glaring at Li Hao on the shore. Seeing that it was just a little kid, it screeched in fury, yet it was also filled with dread. Where did this wild child come from, possessing such strength? Its struggles became more violent. But the fishing line was given to Li Hao by Li Mushu, impervious to water and fire, and able to withstand 1,000,000 caddies of force, something a common Zhou Tian realm shrimp demon could not break. Soon, under the dragging, the shrimp demon's body slowly neared the shore. Its eyeballs showed a struggle, contemplating whether to mutilate itself to escape the hook and flee for its life. Just then, Li Hao on the shore staggered, as if he couldn't steady the fishing rod.
The shrimp demon hesitated upon seeing this. After a tug of war, the shrimp demon felt that this child was only slightly more powerful than itself, and had it not been for the injury caused by the fish hook, it might not have been defeated. Its eyeballs rotating, the shrimp demon tried to pull Li Hao into the water. But each time, Li Hao managed to steady himself in the nick of time, narrowly securing his position. Eventually, after a fierce struggle, the shrimp demon, pained by the pulling, couldn't help but let out its vicious nature. It shrieked and surged towards the fishing platform, intent on crushing this ignorant, annoying brat. But as it came ashore, the previously wobbling child suddenly steadied himself, his face revealing a relieved and beaming smile. This isn't good. The moment the shrimp demon realized something was amiss, a massive force suddenly transmitted from the fishhook, pulling its unbalanced body in mid-air directly towards him. With a whoosh, something like a silver light streaked by— what was that? So bright? The next moment, the shrimp demon knew nothing more as the world went dark. A massive shrimp head rolled away as Li Hao casually stuck his sword into the ground beside him. He then dragged the body over near the cooking area, not far from the two elders, saying, "It's a pity it didn't bite earlier. Otherwise, I could have added some shrimp paste to your meal at noon." Seeing how effortlessly Li Hao dealt with the Zhoutian realm shrimp demon, both elders smiled. They had hidden their breaths earlier, which is why the shrimp demon hadn't detected them, emboldening it. Li Hao cast the bait again and continued to eat and drink. "This Zhoutian realm level 9 demon was so easily slain by you. You must have also reached a small level of achievement with the Li family's Dragon River Divine Meridian," Feng Boping said with a laugh. Li Hao did not deny it. A small level of achievement?
He had already reached perfection. The regular fishing session came to an end as the sun dipped low in the western sky. Li Hao said goodbye to the two gentlemen and the thief saint, who mentioned he had to take a long trip and would be away for half a month. Clearly, some treasure was about to be stolen somewhere. Li Mushu had long been accustomed to departures, and with a smile, he said goodbye and led Li Hao back to the Divine General Mansion. Now that Li Hao had taken an interest in fishing, Li Mushu did not continue to introduce him to the traditional rules of fishing and went straight back to the Listening Rain Tower. Outside the tower, Li Fu, as usual, was waiting there, but this time, beside him stood a young maid, precisely Shui Jian from the Eternal Spring Court. Seeing the elder and younger returning, Shui Jian couldn't help but size up Li Hao. She had long heard that this second master was eccentric. Many ladies and mistresses from the various courts wished to send their children to him for guidance, but he paid attention to no one. Unexpectedly, he would be so close to Li Hao, a child with no talent for martial arts. As such thoughts went through her mind, Shui Jian's gentle face betrayed no hint of them. She smiled, showing her teeth, and stepped forward to explain her purpose. It turned out that Lady He Jianlan was thinking of Li Hao, who had already been studying body refinement realm techniques for quite some time, and wanted him to enter the martial training grounds to practice with other youths from the family. Of course, Li Fu had long learned of this news from Shui Jian's mouth, and as she spoke, eagerness spread across his face, almost as if he wished to nod in agreement on Li Hao's behalf. But after hearing this, Li Hao and Li Mushu looked at each other and both laughed. Li Mushu knew Li Hao's words carried little weight and refusal might lead to persistent entanglements, so he waved his hand and said, "The little guy is fine following me. I can teach him well enough. Going to the martial training grounds would be a waste of time." The old master grumbled internally, sending the boy to the martial training grounds. Wasn't that just bullying? The disciples in the martial training grounds were at best in the Zhoutian realm, and those with higher talents would study under famous mountains or join the military. Letting Li Hao, a boy who could easily kill 9th layer demons of the Zhoutian realm, go to the martial training grounds would be like beating up children and kicking women. What's the difference? Hearing the old master's refusal, both Li Fu and Shui Jian became anxious. But Shui Jian, as if having anticipated this response, immediately spoke sincerely and gently, explaining that it would only take a short practice in the mornings at the martial training grounds to hone real combat experience and practice skills with peers. Li Fu nodded repeatedly at her side, agreeing fervently. While following his uncle would afford the best guidance, he was also concerned that the old master might be leading Li Hao astray. After all, though the uncle was powerful, he appeared to be rather unfocused. He had never heard Li Hao discuss matters of cultivation with his uncle. Instead, they would become excitedly engrossed in conversations about which fish to catch, how to set the hook, and so on. Furthermore, even disciples of a sword saint like Li's uncle had to spar with peers of the same realm. Otherwise, the teachings that remained mere theory would ultimately be understood more slowly. When Li Mushu heard what Shui Jian was suggesting, he nearly rolled his eyes. Would sparring with those kids from the family be more challenging than outwitting demon fish while fishing? It should be noted, fishing for Zhoutian realm demons was not just brute labor. These demon fish had gained intelligence and knew danger. They would rather tear their bodies than escape the hook. and dealing with soul succession realm demons was even harder to manage. Put simply, fishing is a comprehensive skill involving intelligence, stealth, deception, showing weakness, and engaging in a battle of strength, all of it. For these reasons, the old master had been addicted to it for half his life and was still as enthralled as ever. With an outright refusal and feigned anger, threatening to beat someone up if it was mentioned again, Shuijin and Li Fu could only accept it reluctantly. Once Li Hao had put away the fishing gear in the Listening Rain Tower, he went back to the courtyard with Li Fu, learning along the way that Northern Yan had sent a letter. Their eyes lit up at the news, and they hurried to the Eternal Spring Court. A family letter was in Lady He Jianlan's hands. She sat upright in the hall, her demeanor noble and dignified. Tiangang is running short of military funds. I need to attend court tomorrow. A pensive look crossed He Jianlan's eyes. Just then, Li Hao and Li Fu rushed in hurriedly. Li Fu still had the sense to remember propriety, but Li Hao had already barged in. Li Fu tried to stop him but failed and ended up following him in a fluster. When they faced He Jianlan's gaze, the man's face showed a hint of embarrassment, and he quickly bowed to apologize. Is it from them? Li Hao hurriedly asked. He Jianlan's gaze shifted to Li Hao, and upon sensing the faint smell of the water on him, she knew he had just returned from fishing with his uncle. Seeing Li Hao's expectant look, He Jianlan did not mind the boy's rashness and nodded slightly. What? What does it say? Li Hao asked, his eyes full of anticipation. Jianlan paused slightly, a fleeting look of tenderness in her eyes, but it quickly vanished as she spoke softly. It's a military report from Northern Yan. Your father says they've just slain a group of demons, and there are issues with grain and provisions. She did not give details, as it involved military affairs. Did they encounter any dangers? Did they mention me? Asked Li Hao. Jianlan's fingers tightened slightly around the letter as she nodded and said with a smile, Your parents asked me to feed you well and not to overexert yourself. They also inquired about what you've recently eaten, whether you've caught a cold, or whether you have been obedient to your elders. After listening quietly to the lady's words, Li Hao said, Could I see the letter, please? I can read. Jianlan closed the letter and shook her head slightly. No, it contains military matters and you're still too young. All right then, replied Li Hao, and then he said, Please write back on my behalf. Let them know I've been eating well. My cooking is pretty great. I can make tasty food by myself. Also, tell them I'm diligently cultivating my body, which is strong, so I won't catch a cold. I go fishing with the second uncle every day without hardship. The uncle treats me very well, and he even praised my cooking. When they return, I'll let them have a taste. And also, tell them to take good care of themselves and not worry about me. I'm safe here in the Divine General Mansion with both the uncle and you backing me up. Nobody bullies me. Chapter 32. The Child King Li Hao. Hearing her child's careful instructions word by word, He Jianlan's expression tightened slightly. She nodded gently and said warmly, Great lady will convey all that you have said. You need not worry. Practice well with your second grandfather, obey his words, and avoid acting rashly. When you have free time, you may also go to the martial training ground to practice, where you are always welcome. She had not asked Li Hao to go to the martial training ground before for fear he would be bullied, but now that Li Hao had embarked on his cultivation path, visiting the training ground for sparring and real combat practice would be beneficial for his progress. After Li Hao left with Li Fu, Jianlan couldn't help but let out a gentle sigh. By her side, Shuijin, seeing her demeanor, asked cautiously, Why do you sigh, madam? Xiao Qi is busy with military affairs in Northern Yan, perhaps too busy to remember. This couple too, after so many years without seeing each other, I wonder why they don't send more letters to inquire about the child. Hauer is actually very understanding, Jianlan murmured softly, her tone laced with a hint of helplessness and reproach. Shuijian, quick-witted, was taken aback and said, Could it be that what Madam just said was all? Xianlan glanced at her, and Shuijian immediately stopped speaking, bowing her head but unable to resist quietly looking towards the courtyard entrance, where the small figure had already walked far away. So all the words of concern and greetings Madam had just expressed were made up by her? Yet the young master had taken them seriously. Back at Mountain and River Courtyard, Li Hao had not yet taken out his drawing board when he received another letter delivered by a house servant. Seeing the signature, a smile emerged on his face, and the feeling of loss in his heart dissipated. Although he did not have much contact with that couple from Northern Yan, strangely enough, in the quiet of some late nights, he somewhat missed them. Maybe it was the warmth of that embrace, which somehow came back to him in a dream. Or perhaps it was those genuine eyes, which he had not forgotten to this day. The letter in his hand was from Sword Saint's retreat, naturally sent by that lovely young girl. Ever since she went to the retreat, she would send letters every so often. Initially, it was one every 3 to 5 days. Later, as the letters said, her Sword Saint master became stricter, wanting her to focus more on cultivation, so the frequency of writing letters gradually decreased. But now, he still received one every month. The letter no longer contained daily matters since she had written about them so many times already. The cultivation at Sword Saint's retreat was quite monotonous and repetitive. Such was the nature of foundational training. Li Hao opened the letter, sat on the sunlit lounge chair, and with a smile, leisurely read every word, leaving none unread. Inside, he saw a misspelled word, accompanied by a circle and a cross, indicating that she wrote the wrong character but didn't know the correct one and simply skipped it. In his mind, Li Hao could almost picture the young girl scratching her head in frustration as she sat writing the letter, and he couldn't help but chuckle softly. The letter described her recent meals and the precious medicine her Sword Saint master had obtained for her. Her cultivation had reached the 5th level of the Zhoutian realm, and she had opened 21 mystic veins, practicing the most powerful chi circulation skill in the retreat. Li Hao had heard second grandfather mention that the retreat's chi circulation skill was the Galaxy Sword Chi skill, a top-tier technique. If one achieved Cycle Heaven realm perfection, they could open up to 49 veins. In comparison to the Li family's 54 veins Dragon River Divine Meridian cultivation technique, it was only ever so slightly inferior. Besides, the young girl had already opened the Taiyin Mystic Vein and was highly favored by her Sword Saint master. Seeing this, Li Hao couldn't help feeling happy for her. The Dragon River Divine Meridian cultivation technique was not shared outside the direct lineage, and was off limits to even Bian Rushou, his fiancée, as well as all the wives of the various courtyards, including the great lady He Jianlan. However, the techniques they were allowed to practice were also top-notch, only slightly less superior. If someone possessed extremely high talent and could open up 2 special major veins by themselves, they could compensate for the gap in foundational techniques. However, such talented individuals were few and far between in the world. After reading the letter, Li Hao called for a house servant to prepare pen, ink, paper, and a letter for him. He wrote with ease and care, slowly finishing a piece, sharing his recent endeavors in painting, cooking, and the joys of fishing, as well as befriending an interesting elderly predecessor. Of course, the letter did not mention the title or the name of the thief saint. After all, Feng and Dayu belongs to the antagonists, unpopular among the various forces. It was only someone with the casual and unconstrained nature of the second master who would become close friends with such a person. However, outsiders were unaware of their relationship. Otherwise, they would have loudly cursed behind their backs, colluding with corrupt officials no less. Having finished, Li Hao, as usual, casually drew a small emoji to encourage her to work hard at her cultivation and to strive together. After entrusting the letter to a house servant for mailing, Li Hao moved his drawing board over and began to draw as usual. Now, at the 2nd level in the art of painting, his technique had improved even more than before. The changes in his seemingly simple sketches were not significant, but upon closer inspection, it was evident that the eyes in his paintings had become more lifelike, as if gazing out from the paper itself. While he was in the midst of an unfinished painting, a group of figures came galloping into the courtyard, their noise preceding them, and from a distance, someone yelled, "How? We're here!" Looking up, he saw 3 rowdy kids tumbling their way over. They were the only child of the 6th lady, Li Yuanzhao, the 2nd son and 3rd daughter of the 5th lady, Li Yun and Li Jining. On the day they said farewell to Bian Rushou as she departed for the Sword Cottage, these legitimate classmates came to the mountain and river courtyard to see her off, and thus had met Li Hao. Afterward, that kid Li Yun came over multiple times, inquiring about Bian Rushou's whereabouts and when she would return. It was then that Li Hao realized this young rascal, not even fully grown, dared to set his sights on his little girl. However, he didn't stoop to arguing with the kid. He simply spanked him soundly, swelling the boy's buttocks. Then, After a bit of intimidation and threats, he made sure the young brat didn't dare complain to the fifth lady because after all, it's no fun when adults get involved in children's squabbles. Of course, the main reason was that he could win. Since then, Li Yun would carry a hint of a shadow and fear around Li Hao, but that didn't stop him from coming back to the mountain and river courtyard. He later brought his sister and the other youngster from the sixth ladies to bolster their courage and came over together. After several interactions, Li Hao easily became the king among these three children. How? Last time you were telling us about the monkey that got suppressed, but you haven't finished. What happened next? Li Yuanzhao, plump and short, ran up to the drawing board, his dirty little hands hesitating to touch the paper lest he get a knock on the head from Li Hao. Yeah, Li Yun nodded repeatedly, his head bobbing like a pecking chicken already tamed by Li Hao. Next to him, the little girl, Li Jining, handed Li Hao a food box, her bright eyes sparkling as she said, "Brother Hao, this is the crispy cake my mother made. We've all tried it, and it's really delicious. We brought some for you." "I haven't tried it yet," Li Yuanzhao blurted out, instantly exposing a flaw, and reached out his dirty little hand, fresh from martial practice at the training field, to grab some. But Li Jining twisted her body to dodge and gave him a fierce glare. The little fatty instantly looked at her with a mix of hurt and appeal. Li Hao laughed and, without any hesitation, took the food box and opened it. A pleasant aroma wafted out. He tried a piece and found it indeed delightful, then he shared the rest with the others, saying, "You go grab a little stool for yourselves and come over. Eat while I finish the story." "Zhao chairs!" Li Yun immediately bellowed. Li Hao knocked on his head in annoyance. "Zhao is not someone you can order around. Get it yourself!" Covering his head, Li Yun appeared somewhat timid and muttered something unintelligible. He then pointed at a house servant and ordered, "You, bring me a stool over here." The servant did not dare disobey and went to fetch it with a smile. Li Yuanzhao and Li Jining, familiar with the routine, ran into the house to find small stools for themselves and sat down obediently beside Li Hao. Chapter 33. Continuing the soul, that cheeky monkey. Li Hao broke apart the crispy pancake, savoring it slowly while continuing the story for the three eagerly anticipating youngsters. In the pavilion, Zhao and Li Fu watched from a distance, both wearing helpless smiles. The young master had somehow come across these storybooks. If only he would devote all that effort to body refinement, surely he would achieve great things in the future. However, having watched Li Hao be carefree for so long, they had come to accept many things and let nature take its course. Just like Second Master had said, the vast Li family didn't lack a specialist in body refinement, but that child might lack a happy childhood without his parents around. Perhaps this was the only joy he had. As the sun set into dusk and the story ended, Li Hao shooed away the three youngsters, particularly reminding the most mischievous among them, Li Yun. "Go back and behave, don't get beaten by your mother again." This little guy had become so excited when he heard the part about causing havoc in the Heavenly Palace, showing his rebellious streak by arguing with his own mother and wanting to switch from swordsmanship to using a staff. Afterwards, under his mother's direct guidance, he still felt that the sword suited him better. Li Yun's face turned red, and he ran off quickly. "Brother Hao, I'll come to see you again tomorrow." His sister, Li Jining, said with a gentle, timid smile. "Brother Hao!" Li Yuanzhao, the little chubby boy, also hesitated to speak. "Go on, go!" Li Hao waved them all away with his hand. After the children had all left the backyard, Li Hao calmed his mind and continued to paint. After gaining dozens of skill points in the art of painting, the moon had already risen. Li Hao had dinner with Li Fu and Zhao. After returning to his room, he picked up a book on martial arts taken from the Listening Rain Tower and flipped through it. This book was not about cultivation techniques, but rather served as an introduction to various realms. Soul Succession Realm, as the name implies, involves inheriting a prior soul. For those without background, ordinary people can enter the soul succession by joining a martial temple. If favored by heroic spirits, they too can undergo soul succession. Furthermore, by enlisting in the army, one can worship the souls of soldiers who died in past Dayu wars and possibly receive a legacy from a heroic spirit. Moreover, joining famous mountains, great teachers, or sects also allows access to ancestral heroic spirits. Li Hao quietly read, his eyes flashing with light. He pulled up his panel to check. Name, Li Hao. Age, 8. Cultivation level, 10th layer of Circulation Realm. Sword Dao. 3 stages, Flying Phase, Hidden Bow. Sword Skill, Endless Sea Tide, perfected. Falling Snow Sword skill, true form. Physical body path, 5 stages. Myriad forms, Tiger Press. Body techniques, Stone Skin 100 refinements, true form. 1000 Jiao's Holy Body 4th layer. 1000 Jiao's Body Beginner. Primordial 3rd layer, Enter the Ghost Body Perfection. Dragon Cicada Void Body 4th layer. Dragon Soul Body Beginner. Control path, 3 stages. Control techniques, Heavenly Gang Zhou Tian skill, perfection. 100 Battle Cycle, Heaven skill, perfection. Dragon River Divine Meridian, perfection. 9 Revolutions, Starry Sky skill, perfection. Chest Tao, 4 stages, 28 10,000s. Fishing Tao, 2 stages, 97 1000. Art of Painting, 2 stages, 231 1000. Culinary Tao, 2 stages, 736 1000. Chess Catalog collected, Myriad forms, Tiger Press, Flying Phase. Hidden Bow. Fishing Catalog collected, none. Famous paintings collected, 1000 Mountains Birds, Flying Painting. Snow Mountain Spirit, Fox Painting. Kylan Steed Painting. Cooking recipes collected, none. State of Mind, Chess Heart, embedded. Artistic skill points, 0. The panel now was visibly longer than before. Even though Li Hao had omitted dozens of body refining techniques, it was still a dense list. From fishing, he had received 6 points of artistic skill, which he had used up completely. His cultivation in the body path had risen from the 3rd phase to the 5th phase. Crossing from 3 to 4, there was a threshold similar to Chess Tao that required an inner connection to upgrade further. At that moment, following a prompt on the panel, the previously condensed chess heart could actually be embedded like a chess manual. Once the chess heart embedded into the body path cleared the hurdle, Li Hao's affection for chess skills did not diminish at all. On the contrary, although he had passed the mental barrier in the body path, he didn't develop any extra affection for it, still feeling the usual about it. The panel could transfer state of mind, but it seemed unable to transfer the power of emotion. And when the body path reached phase 4, the many low-grade body refinement skills underwent a remarkable transformation, all evolving into higher-level techniques. Stone Skin 100 refinements transformed into Stone Skin 1000 refinements, and Barbarian Ox Strength into Bull Demon Barbarian Strength, enhancing the techniques and their effects, bringing significant improvements to the physical body. The other numerous inferior grade techniques did the same, causing all organs throughout his body to undergo new transformations and enhancements. Now, just in terms of physical strength, he had reached 80,000 caddies. While the several peak body refinement arts, even though there was no grade transformation, they had all entered the 4th layer. However, at the 4th layer, he encountered some peculiar issues. Merely depending on the energy of heaven and earth was no longer sufficient to meet the practice conditions of these peak body refinement arts. Even if his cultivation in the body path advanced to phase 5, he couldn't eliminate the external obligatory conditions. For example, to practice the 4th layer of 1000 Jiao's holy body, one must personally slay a Jiao dragon, capture its soul, and refine oneself, subduing and imprisoning its soul to break through the circulation realm and step into the soul succession realm. The Dragon Cicada Void Body was the same. The 4th layer, the Dragon Soul Body, required a drop of true dragon blood to be completed. Without resolving external conditions, no matter how much physical comprehension he had, even if he knew how to practice, it was like a skilled wife unable to cook without rice, with no solution at hand. Luckily, these 2 practice conditions were not difficult to meet for Li Hao. With just a word, Li Muxu could resolve them in minutes. However, the methods of inheriting the soul in these 2 body refinement techniques were both unorthodox, and even if successful, they were considered mid-tier in the soul succession realm, not outstanding. The strength of the soul succession realm depends on the strength of the inherited heroic spirit's legacy. Thus, major powers still maintain their advantage in this regard, creating a vast gap from ordinary martial artists. Famous mountain grandmasters could let their direct disciples worship before the heroic spirit hall of their ancestors, and if lucky, receive the legacy of a heroic spirit ancestor, ascending in 1 step, which is considered top tier. After all, those capable of passing down heroic spirits were ancient old monsters from ages past, at least possessing the 4 stands realm existence that could defy the heavens and change fate. Such strength in Dayu could be counted on fingers. The inheritance from even a trace of their soul's will like a key to a treasure trove, was immensely beneficial. Whereas for martial artists without this background and heritage, unless they had extraordinary talents and took oath under a famous mountain, their only choice would be to inherit a soul from a martial temple. The heroic spirits in the martial temples were heroes of ancient times, of varying strength, uneven, and not all complete, dependent on the inheritor's own talents and disposition to see which heroic spirit would choose them. Lastly, there were the likes of Jiao dragons and mountain demons of lesser kinds. Such great demons were not stingy with their souls, but as their spirits were too weak, the inheritance they could offer was limited. Being born into the Li family, Li Hao had countless choices, among which the best option was to enter the ancestral hall of the Li family. There were the lineage's ancestral spirits worshipped from the first generation, that ancient divine general who opened the Dayu lands with Emperor Dayu, to the many generations that followed, including many top-tier powerhouses. Moreover, due to the connection by bloodline, inheriting the soul became easier, which was one of the reasons why martial arts noble clans remained powerful over ages. Heritage. What is heritage? It's the existence that can be passed down through layers. After successfully inheriting a soul in the Li family ancestral hall and continuing to practice the two peak body refinement arts, capturing the Jiao soul and the true dragon soul will merely strengthen himself, not allow him to ascend. Just by that, the difference is significant. However, before that, Li Hao planned to let his own accumulation deepen further. The control path, as he thought, corresponds to normal cultivation, Qi circulation skill, channeling veins, future soul succession, realms control of souls, and even the divine soul realm most likely all depend on the existence of the control path. With the understanding from the third phase of the control path, he practiced both of the Li family's top Qi circulation skills to perfection. You should know, others, even if naturally gifted, would only dare to practice one, since each practice was equivalent to redoing the 10 layers of the circulation realm. But with the insight from the third phase of the control path, Li Hao moved smoothly through several practices and easily completed them. And the two top Qi circulation skills, compared to the inherent Qi circulation skills in the body refinement arts, had some differences, which resulted in fewer overlaps than the two body refinement Qi skills, causing a multitude of intermixing, hence leading to a rather exaggerated situation. Li Hao's Qi circulation reached from 143 cycles to a lineage 248 cycles. Yes, to an extremely exaggerated extent, surpassing even the All Heavens Zhou skill of the Imperial family's 168 cycles by a whole 80 cycles. Chapter 34, Flawless Body, 10 million pounds. When the Cycle Heaven realm reached perfection with 54 meridians, it meant an additional 4,320 cycles of strength, which was over 800,000 jin of colossal force. However, the royal family had access to the Dong Huang scripture, Dayu's top meridian opening skill, capable of opening 62 meridians, adding 8 meridians of Cycle Heaven strength, which, when converted, provided only about 600,000 jin of extra force. But this was not Li Hao's limit. The Great Yin channel was worth 10 meridians, equivalent to 2,480 cycles, which was close to 500,000 jin. In addition, the meridian opening skill that Li Hao practiced was not just the Dragon River Divine Meridian. The 9 Revolutions Starry Sky skill was also a meridian opening skill, along with 3 mid to high tier meridian opening techniques and several lower tier ones. However, those lower tier ones only opened the easiest meridians, which were already covered by the mid to high tier techniques, rendering them ineffective. But the 9 Revolutions Starry Sky skill, combined with the 3 mid to high tier techniques, enabled Li Hao to open up major meridians not covered by the Dragon River Divine Meridian, bringing his total to 69 types of open meridians. He had already surpassed the number of meridians opened by the Dong Huang scripture of the royal family. Li Hao was not yet satisfied. Currently, he planned to rely on his own physical insights to deduce the 4th layer of the primordial skill and break through the flawless body. The first chapter gathers the power of yin and yang from heaven and earth. The second layer encompasses the celestial stars. The third layer, the hard-to-notice mystic veins within the human body. For the 4th layer, I hope to open the Great Yang Meridian and combine the yin and yang channel. Li Hao's ideas were not whimsical. With the insights from the 5th stage of the physical body path, he considered himself half a grandmaster in body refinement. What is a grandmaster? It is someone who can create martial arts and establish their own schools. How the 4th layer of the original primordial should be cultivated, Li Hao did not know, nor did he need to. It was likely that the Li family had not been able to gather the complete scripture for years, and it had probably been destroyed, becoming dust in history. If that was the case, he would just continue writing a new chapter for this top-tier body refinement technique. Let the pearl no longer be covered in dust. Several days later, by the Blackwater Demon Lake, Li Hao sat outside the fishing terrace when suddenly an insight struck him. His blood chi surged, and bones beneath his skin subtly trembled. The chi force in his body danced back and forth within the 69 major meridians, eventually rushing with immense pressure to the crown of his head, almost causing his brain to burst. This was an exceedingly dangerous endeavor, but Li Hao's control over his body was extremely fine-tuned. He could even fold his ears shut and move each bone as flexibly as his fingers, exerting force at will. With a thunderous crash, his brain seemed to vibrate, and he was assailed by waves of swelling and pain. Li Hao gritted his teeth and endured until that powerful chi force suddenly found an escape, rushing out before returning through the same gap, creating a cycle inside his body. A gleam of brilliant light shone in Li Hao's eyes, filled with excitement and agitation. At last, it was done. The Great Yin Channel was a wandering meridian, appearing randomly anywhere in the body at different times, making it extremely difficult to locate and control. Hence, it was called the Mystic Vein, also implying the elusive and mysterious. But the Great Yang Meridian was fixed, located inside the skull. Comparatively, the Great Yang Meridian was even more dangerous than the Great Yin Channel. Nobody dared to try opening it. Failure could result in idiocy or disability at best, or at worst, a burst skull leading to instant death. While a single meridian could account for the strength of 10, the enormous risk involved to gain just a little more power deterred 99% of people from attempting it. The reason being, almost all who had tried failed. Only certain martial arts fanatics and unrivaled geniuses would even consider engaging in such madness. Now, with the Great Yang Meridian opened, Li Hao instantly felt as if the Mystic Vein had found an anchor and no longer drifted around. Instead, it gradually approached the Great Yang Meridian, the two intertwining. Yin and Yang combined, I shall call the 4th layer. Yin and Yang, no, flawless body. Li Hao summoned the interface, and as his will commanded, the entry for primordial skill on the interface actually advanced to the 4th layer, named Flawless Body Minor Accomplishment. He immediately circulated the Yin and Yang dual pulse, repeatedly transferring the chi force within his body to familiarize himself with the process. Soon, under the entanglement of Yin and Yang, a faint special vortex of power emerged. Through the swirl, Li Hao seemed to glimpse a golden light within his skull. He tried to reach it with his chi force, only to realize it was extremely distant, far beyond his grasp. Legend has it that there are a total of 108 major meridians in the human body. If all of them were opened, perhaps, I might be able to touch that golden light, Li Hao thought, as a sense of enlightenment washed over him. This was an insight from the physical body path, enriched by a wealth of cultivation memories, giving him an understanding of the body that was beyond ordinary people. Body refining is not simple, nor is it as unpromising as the elders said. On the contrary, Li Hao felt that the tiers of body refining techniques within Listening Rain Tower were inadequate. Even the 1,000 Jiao's holy body placed at the 6th floor could advance to the soul succession realm only by its 4th layer, and the other cultivation methods aimed directly for the top. There were multiple reasons why body refiners were not highly valued, including the difficulty of cultivation. Li Hao also believed the scarcity of techniques was a fact. If the techniques collected by the Li family were so few and far between, what about elsewhere? Li Hao looked at the interface. The previous Flawless Body Minor Accomplishment had now become Great Accomplishment. The intersection of the Yin and Yang dual pulse seemed to connect all the major meridians, allowing all the chi force to be instantly concentrated and orchestrated within. Like erecting a dragon spine in the body. Li Hao tried it out and suddenly threw a punch. With a whoosh, the punch whipped through the air like the roar of a tiger, actually pressing down the surface of the water several zang ahead, creating waves and ripples 7 or 8 meters in diameter. If this punch had really hit solidly, it would have been like a cannonball hitting the water, bursting forth with a tremendous splash. Li Hao was slightly stunned and shock shone in his eyes. Through the refined sensations of his flesh, he knew just how terrifying the power of his punch was. With the full strength of his major vessels condensed, his power had doubled. You should know that at this moment, with his yin and yang dual pulse condensed, and along with the 69 major vessels he had originally cultivated, it's as if he had 89 major vessels. With each vessel circulating 248 times, his body's strength had already reached 5 million jin! Under the doubled burst, it was close to 9 million jin. This was almost reaching the divine power of 10 million jin. And even a Zhou Tian realm true dragon wouldn't possess such fierce strength. Even royal talents, wielding top-notch luck in the meridian opening skill, only have a strength of 2 million jin, unless they also activate 2 major vessels. If there's only one, they lack the ability to instantly condense the energy of all major vessels and unleash double the power. No wonder that uncle of mine is so terrifying, with both pulses converging to instantly double the strength. Too frightening, Li Hao murmured. Bright and peculiar lights burst forth in Li Hao's eyes. He dared not imagine how formidable it would be if all 108 vessels in his body were developed. You must realize, an ordinary martial artist at the Zhou Tian realm would have only 20,000 jin of strength. Although that's the lower limit, the very lowest level of existence, 90% of warriors at the 10th layer of the Zhou Tian realm had at least several 100,000 jin of strength. However, compared to Li Hao, the gap was still too vast. With my current strength, I could easily crush those elite Cycle Realm soldiers from the Yuan camp, even at the 10th layer, Li Hao thought to himself. Elite soldiers from the Yuan camp at 10th layer only had a massive strength of 500,000 jin, appearing as mere children before him. Royal talents were 4 times stronger than the soldiers from the Yuan camp, and he was 4 times stronger than those royal talents. Li Hao retracted his fist and regulated his breath. Having just unleashed double the power of yin and yang, he felt a significant consumption of physical strength, which was not sustainable for regular use. However, it was enough to deliver a fatal blow in a critical exchange. When his body had relaxed and recovered, Li Hao looked toward the demon lake but did not see second uncle's figure. He said he went to track the old dragon's trail in the demon lake. Who knows where he had ended up going? This demon lake stretched for thousands of miles with deep waters. Hiding a dragon demon inside, it really was hard to detect. At that moment, a faint movement suddenly transmitted over. Li Hao's ears twitched, and he quickly turned his head to look, only to see a snow-white figure swaying amidst the withered yellow leaves, as though hiding. He flashed over to the figure, and it turned out to be a snow-white little fox, similar in size to a newborn puppy. After taking a closer look, Li Hao saw that the little fox did not have any demonic aura. It seemed to be a common wild fox. "Little guy, how did you get here? Where are your parents?" Li Hao bent down and picked up the little fox from the leaves. The little fox's ears had a touch of orange-red, seeming like a mix between a white fox and a red fox. When Li Hao picked it up, it immediately struggled and pushed against his hands with its little paws. Li Hao placed it on his hand and looked around but did not see any sign of adult foxes. Perhaps the little thing had sneaked out from its nest. Seeing this, Li Hao put it back on the ground for its parents to find it. The little fox struggled in the leaves, too small to move swiftly or with agility. Li Hao smiled and paid it no more heed, returning to the lake to continue fishing. Before long, a figure flashed back.
It was Li Mushu. Seeing that his hands were empty, Li Hao knew that the hunt for the dragon demon had failed. The old master had tried countless times over the past half-year, proving that the dragon demon was extremely cautious and cunning. To cultivate to a level that caught Li Mushu's attention, it must have lived for thousands of years at least. Seeing Li Hao's cheerful demeanor, Li Mushu snorted disapprovingly and said with a flick of his sleeve, "What about you, Air Force?" "Caught a small one in the power passage realm," said Li Hao with a hee-hee. Li Muxiu rolled his eyes, even more annoyed. As the sun set in the west, Li Muxiu, in a hurry, could only fish up a power passage realm fish demon to avoid the risk of returning empty-handed, and then took Li Hao back to Qingzhou City. Before leaving, Li Hao noticed that the little fox had crawled to a distant place and yet was still not found by its parents. He asked the old master to help check, only to find a pool of blood and some snow-white fox fur after a search. From the looks of the scene, the adult fox had been eaten by some demon beast. Such occurrences were common in the wild. Li Hao sighed, found the little fox struggling to climb cluelessly around, and brought it back to Qingzhou City with him. In the yellowed fallen leaves of the mountain and river courtyard, a touch of Snow White was added henceforth. Chapter 35. Ancestral Temple, several months later, by the Blackwater Demon Lake. Li Hao hauled up a fish demon of the 8th layer of Zhoutian realm, casually drew his sword to slay it, then set up a cauldron over a fire to cook. Scaling, skinning, Debaninga's movements were as fluid as drifting clouds and flowing water. This time, without adding spicy peppers, he prepared a nourishing soup, tossing in some wild mushrooms to cook together.
The rich mushroom aroma drifted out with the steam from the edge of the iron lid, making the two elders fishing by the lake sniff the air and cast occasional glances. As Li Hao announced, "Let's eat," the two elders materialized beside the cauldron like phantoms, each already holding their own eating utensils, a pair of exquisite jade chopsticks and a pair of rough ones made from tree twigs simultaneously diving into the pot. Not bad. Li Mushu slurped up a slice of fish and gave Li Hao a thumbs up. Old Master Feng also smiled as he served himself a bowl of fish soup, savoring it slowly. The contribution of this fish was significant, adding several dozen points to his cooking experience along with the fishing practices. Li Hao figured his cooking would be the first artistry to reach the 3rd segment after Chest Tao. "Here, little guy, try some." Li Hao picked up a piece of fish and placed it on a nearby leaf, and a white figure darted out to nibble on it. "That's a fox, and you raised it to be a dog," Feng laughed. He had been back for several months now, and as for what he didn't tell Li Mushu or Li Hao, and naturally, they would not ask. "There's not much difference," Li Hao chuckled. Halfway through the meal, Li Hao felt the timing was right, and said to Old Master Li Mushu, "Second Grandpa, I'm planning on breaking through to the Soul Succession realm soon. Do you have time to take me to the Ancestral Shrine?" Both elders paused with their chopsticks and turned to look at Li Hao. Li Mushu inquired in astonishment, "You're going to break through to the Soul Succession realm? You've reached Cycle Heaven realm perfection?" Li Hao nodded. He had deliberately delayed mentioning this to the old master to avoid progressing too quickly, which might appear too shocking and outlandish. "Really? For real?"
Feng Boping put aside his eating and drinking altogether, staring at Li Hao in astonishment. He knew that even though the boy played around, he would never joke about cultivation. But at the age of 8, breaking through to the Soul Succession realm, that seemed a bit too far-fetched. Your Dragon River Divine Meridian is at perfection already? Impossible. Even if you disregard your disability in martial arts, even your father didn't step into the Soul Succession realm until he was 9. Li Mushu looked doubtfully at Li Hao, knowing he wouldn't make such a pointless joke, but still found it unbelievable. He had seen prodigies with shocking talent, like Li Junye, who also reached Soul Succession at 8.5 years old. Furthermore, that person was diligent, day and night, intelligent, and extremely hardworking. But Li Hao spent his days fishing with him. Sometimes, they fished for an entire day. When did he have the time to cultivate? It's true. Li Hao felt he might have overestimated the old master's capacity to cope, but there was no turning back now, so he reluctantly carried on. Could it be that your meridians have cleared on their own? Li Mushu scrutinized Li Hao. Even though you have an extraordinary talent for body refinement, breaking through to Soul Succession would at least take 7 or 8 years, or even a dozen years to a lifetime. How can meridian opening perfection be achieved in just a short year? That's simple. Just let the young lad show us. Old Master Feng intervened. Li Mushu agreed with a nod. Right. Show me. Fine then.
Li Hao immediately stood up, away from the cauldron, then stirred his chi force, activating 54 major meridians throughout his body, with formidable chi waves surging all over. He briefly suppressed the concealment effect of the all-encompassing attributes, allowing the chi waves to burst forth from his body. Li Mushu's and Feng Boping's eyes went wide with disbelief. Li Mushu's reaction even more so as his chopsticks fell into the pot. He looked at Li Hao in a daze, slack-jawed. Is it really true? As a four-stands realm powerhouse, how could he be mistaken? 54 meridians, full and robust, a bona fide perfection of the perfect Zhou Tian realm. But the boy before him was only 8 years old. After a moment of being stunned, Feng Boping turned to look at Li Museo with a speechless expression. Your Li family really knows how to breed monsters. First, it was that kid Li Junye, and now it's this one. If the other divine general mansions knew about this, they'd probably be green with envy and thoroughly scrutinize you guys. Li Musho had yet to snap out of his shock, just staring blankly at Li Hao. This wasn't just a freakish talent of perfect Zhou Tian. It also revealed something else. Li Hao's meridians were unblocked. It meant that Li Hao was no longer a martial arts invalid. He could cultivate, and with such talent, he would definitely become the number one of the Li family's next 3 generations. Even considering the past 10 generations, this aptitude would unquestionably be the best. Countless thoughts swirled in his mind at that instant, and Li Mushu suddenly felt a surge of guilt and self-reproach. Such a genius, and yet he had been leading him astray every day with trivial pursuits, eating, drinking, playing, fishing, indiscriminately. Had he not severely hindered his progress? Second grandpa? Li Hao finished cultivating and noticed his second uncle lost in thought, so he reminded him. Li Mushu came back to his senses, and the first thing he wanted to do was grab the chopsticks to maintain his composure, but they had already fallen into the soup. He couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh, then stared deeply at Li Hao. How did your meridians become so unblocked? It seemed to happen in a dream, Li Hao said. One day I had a dream, and in the dream I was cultivating. Suddenly, as I exerted myself, my whole body felt relaxed, and when I woke up, cultivation seemed extremely simple. I went through meridian opening without any obstacles. The 2 elders were speechless. Did you unblock it all in your sleep? You're surely speaking in your dreams now. But other than what Li Hao said, they couldn't find any other possibility. Could it be that this boy's previous meridian obstruction was a feigned obstruction? Feng Boping pinched his sharp white beard, pondering, I've heard that some martial arts invalids are temporary, and some become unblocked suddenly during practice. He might be one of those. Maybe. Li Mushu nodded. He had also heard of such a possibility, but the chances were extremely low. Now that this boy can cultivate, your Li family is truly impressive. A true dragon has fallen, yet another one stands. Tisk, tisk. Feng Boping couldn't help but express his admiration. Li Mushu sighed and said, Had I known it would be like this, I would have nurtured him properly. He has been wasting a lot of time hanging around with us. Li Hao was startled by these words and quickly said, Elder, you aren't going to force me to cultivate from here on, are you? What do you mean, force you to cultivate? Li Museo said irritably. Now that your meridians are unblocked, don't you want to properly cultivate and establish a great and illustrious reputation in the future? Stop joking around. Without a second thought, Li Hao hurriedly said, Second uncle, don't ruin me. I don't want to join the army and go to war. Life is too comfortable now. And fame and honors, a dog wouldn't even want them. Let whoever wants them have them. Li Mushu was at a loss for words. Others would have been thrilled at the chance to become famous, but this kid, what nonsense was he talking about? Ha ha ha. Feng Boping burst into laughter. It seems this little scoundrel is nothing like Junye. I think what he says is quite right. Fame? Youngsters have pursued fame since ancient times, but in the end, wealth and honors aren't for this world. Li Mushu's expression shifted subtly, and deep down he felt as if a fishbone had pierced his heart, painfully stabbing him. Li Junye had once emerged dazzlingly spectacular, but afterwards, like a shooting star, he briefly shone before falling rapidly. He looked at Li Hao, who was nervously watching him. Li Museu's heart felt like a flower being crumpled. If he sent this child to the battlefield, who could guarantee that he wouldn't become a second Li Junye? Forget it. Li Mushu sighed deeply and said, If you don't want to compete for fame, so be it. From now on, just like old me, stay at the Li family, live a life of leisure, and be an unknown old invalid. Feng Boping chuckled, Who dare say the Fist Saint is unknown unless his mouth hasn't been knocked crooked by you yet? Li Mushu shot him an annoyed look and said to Li Hao, From now on, when your parents hear the news and come looking, I'll set aside my old pride and take their scolding. "Kid, come and eat." After saying that, he flicked his finger and a pair of chopsticks flew out of the pot. He then pulled over a branch, peeled it to make chopsticks, and began eating. But it was noticeably less carefree and joyous than before, as if burdened with heavy thoughts. Li Hao breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, as long as he could continue fishing with the old man, it was good. Although he could fish on his own, fishing at the Blackwater Demon Lake with the old man meant not only assured safety, but also the chance to catch big fish, which was a delightful prospect. Sitting by the pot, Li Hao continued eating. Second uncle about the soul succession. Eat up, and afterwards I'll take you there. Li Mushu glanced at Li Hao and then started eating the fish vigorously. Li Hao felt at ease and began to eat and drink heartily. The Li family ancestral hall was located in the deepest part of the Divine General Mansion, carved into a mountain slope. The security outside the mountain was tight, with warriors clad in heavy armor, but there were only fallen leaves on the steps leading up the slope, empty and silent. Outside, the majestic and solemn ancestral hall on the flat square stood several large cauldrons, with incense wafting from inside. Two figures descended from the sky, gliding toward the square in front of the ancestral hall, and then ascended the steps on foot. Even Li Mushu, the old man, reined in his usual playful demeanor and took on a calm expression as he led Li Hao up the steps with measured pace. Second brother, what brings you here? A calm voice came from inside, as tranquil as a placid lake. Just the voice itself seemed to settle one's myriad of thoughts. Li Hao looked inside and saw many ancestral tablets on display. Among them prominently stood a golden statue of the Li family's founding divine general, Li Tianyuan. Off to the side in front of the ancestral tablets was an old man with a long beard and eyebrows, sitting alone on a cushion, with a chessboard placed before him, playing against himself, gently making his moves. Of course, I'm bringing the younger generation over for the ancestors to take a look, Li Mushu said as he stepped over the threshold and entered. Upon hearing this, the old man slowly lifted his head, and as his gaze landed on Li Hao, who had just stepped through the threshold, his unfazed eyes revealed a hint of ripples. Soul succession? This child seems even younger than Junye. Second brother, you can't be joking, can you? Chapter 36, Ancestors' Rules. I can take a joke, but I dare not joke with my ancestors. Li Mushu spoke indifferently. The elder with long eyebrows slightly furrowed his brow, thinking indeed it was so. Although his second brother was often casual, he was always very proper in this ancestral hall. He asked, could it be that this child appears young, yet he is 9 years old? 8 years old. 8 years old? The elder with long eyebrows was stunned. Waves of emotion rippled through his eyes. Are you saying he achieved perfect Zhou at 8 years old? Correct! Having said this, Li Mushu then walked to the cushion in front of the golden statue and kneeled down to worship. Howard, come here. After kowtowing 3 times, he called out softly while kneeling. Li Hao immediately walked to his side, kneeled down and kowtowed to the ancestors. Li Hao did as he was told, kneeling on the cushion and kowtowing respectfully to all the spirit tablets in turn. Li Mushu lifted his head and spoke softly. Descendant Li Mushu, today I bring the junior here to listen to the teachings of our ancestors. Please bestow upon us the inheritance. As these words fell, the numerous spirit tablets above seemed to tremble slightly. Li Hao had finished his kowtowing when he looked up, only to see a series of spectral figures materializing before the spirit tablets, seated in the air. Some wore scholars' robes and white gowns, others were clad in heavy armor, and some even had half their bodies missing, wrapped only in a battle banner. Clearly, these were the ancestors of the Li family. Tisk, another fine seedling indeed, perfection in the Zhou realm. Yet with a youth's bone structure, just over 8 years old, even mightier by 3 points compared to that little fellow 20 years ago. Who would have thought that the good fortune of my Li family in the past 100 years would be so thriving? We must caution those youngsters not to become arrogant, or else this child will be their lesson. The many spectral ancestors chatted and shared their opinions in gentle murmurs. When Li Hao entered the ancestral hall, he had already temporarily retracted his myriad attributes, not sure if these ancestral spirits could ignore the concealing effects of myriad attributes. Still, it was better not to invite unnecessary trouble. This child is talented and clever, I'll not interfere. You grant it. With such talent, only ancestors like you are fit to bestow it. After some exchange, many of the ancestral shadows gradually faded once again, returning to the spirit tablets, leaving only 4 spectral figures still suspended above the tablets. They merely watched Li Hao quietly, without speaking. The figure holding a spear was just about to speak, when suddenly, a burst of light emanated from the central statue of the golden body, as if coming to life. The other few shadows couldn't help but look over, immediately bowing their heads in a slight nod, while the rest of the spirit tablets also trembled slightly, emitting a nearly uniform voice. "We pay homage to our ancestor." In front of the golden statue, a figure with a tall stature and broad shoulders sat cross-legged, more substantial in form compared to the other shadows. His features were identical to the golden statue. "If you can uphold my oath, you will receive my inheritance." The middle-aged man looked down at Li Hao, his expression gentle and tranquil, undisturbed by any ripple. Li Hao could feel the old man next to him trembling slightly, seemingly quite excited, and he also recognized this spectral figure to be the Li family's original ancestor, Li Tianyuan. "We pay homage to our ancestor." Old Master Li Musiu bowed his head and kowtowed. Li Hao immediately followed suit, imitating him. "In my time, I followed Emperor Dayu in his campaigns, subduing countless demons and tribes throughout Donghuang, and I made 2 oaths to the Emperor that have continued the Li family's glory for 1,000 years. Spoke the spirit of ancestor Li Tianyuan. The first oath is that the people of the Li family shall vow to protect the Li family unto death, through thick and thin. The second oath is to defend the Dayu dynasty to the death, to share the same fate with Dayu. Can you do this?" After speaking, Li Tianyuan fixed his gaze on the Li Hao below. Li Hao looked shocked. Vow to protect the Li family to death? Did the Li family refer to certain people or everyone? The ancestral hall was deadly silent, with all eyes seemingly converged on the young child, waiting for him to speak. After a long silence, Li Hao finally spoke softly. "Ancestor, forgive my dullness, for I am confused." "Speak," the spirit of Li Tianyuan said, his expression serene. "Does protecting the Li family mean everyone, including the branches of the clan?" Li Hao asked carefully. "Does this protection imply safeguarding them, or does it mean I cannot harm them? You only protect the direct bloodline. Since it's protection, you naturally cannot harm them. Otherwise, if you chop off their limbs and leave them just a breath, it could still be considered protection," stated Li Tianyuan, clearly indicating the severity of the oath. Li Hao asked, "Then, what if there are traitors in the family's direct line? Or if someone schemes against me? Such degenerates. You can hand them over to those who haven't entered the ancestral hall to continue their souls. But if such degenerates attack or ambush me first, wouldn't I only be able to hide?" Li Hao spoke. "He who inherits my soul within the same realm excluding the royal family shall be invincible," Li Tianyuan said indifferently. "If you wish to avoid them, it is effortless. If you encounter those above your realm, you just need to flee for your life. There is no need for unnecessary heroics. What if they die in front of me while I stand by and do nothing? You must intervene to save them, even if they are unworthy," Li Tianyuan said. "However, when the unworthy face justice, you may choose to be absent, so your heart's oath will not be broken, and you won't be hurt." Li Hao thought for a moment. That could indeed be a solution. But that seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? As a prodigy, encountering a Li family peer in the same realm, he could only hide away. Even if the other party faces misfortune and he witnesses it, he still has to help? That seems rather unreasonable. Stop talking nonsense. Li Mushu's expression changed slightly, and he promptly whispered to Li Hao. Li Tianyuan's heroic spirit, however, did not get angry, but calmly looked at Li Hao and slowly said, "Indeed, it is not fair. But do you know why I would have talents eligible to succeed? The ancestral spirits in the family shrine endure such injustices and make such heart's oaths. The Li family indeed has a family shrine and many ancestral heroic spirits, but not every member of the Li family is eligible to inherit these spirits. Their standards are quite high." Li Hao shook his head. "I don't know. It is for continuation." Li Tianyuan spoke slowly. "The first heart's oath is to prevent gifted members of the family from becoming spoiled and arrogant, disregarding the lives of the ordinary and mediocre within the clan, even to the point of breaking away from the family after ascending with the resources of the clan and seeking their fortune recklessly. Therefore, this restriction may seem unfair to the talented, but at most, it is a minor grievance, Yet the benefit is that it can sustain the family, passing down the legacy from generation to generation. Li Hao thought it over. From the perspective of the ancestors, this was indeed the case. And the Li family's 1,000-year existence, unextinguished and not feared by the royal family, is due to the Second Heart's Oath. Li Tianyuan spoke calmly. Originally, there were 12 divine generals who campaigned with the founding emperor. Now, in the Dayu Divine General Mansion, there are only 5 seats, of which 2 rose in recent hundreds of years. The descendants of those old fellows from the past have long been obliterated by the sands of time, and the remaining ones have concealed their identities, their whereabouts unknown. These 2 hearts' oaths may seem like restrictions, like chains, but in reality, they are for the continuation of the bloodline. Otherwise, with the Li family's 1,000 years of accumulated military merits, its connections, the number of generals, and the prestige within the army, how could the royal family dare to empower them so readily, and why wouldn't they use imperial skill to weaken and harm us? Hearing this, Li Hao was momentarily stunned. From the perspective of this old ancestor, it had indeed been achieved. The benefits outweighed the drawbacks. For a divine general lineage to continue for 1,000 years with just a casual remark, its difficulty was beyond what ordinary people could imagine. Perhaps it was because the royal family knew that the Li family's top talents would inherit the ancestral spirits in the family shrine and had these 2 hearts' oaths that they allowed the Li family its current glory. Now that you are fully aware, are you willing to make the heart's oaths? Li Tianyuan asked calmly, yet earnestly. Li Hao pondered and remained undecided, still unsure of what to do. He always felt that these 2 hearts' oaths were like a curse upon the Li family. Though they ensured 1,000 years of glory, were they not also a tight shackle? Generations of honor, this hall full of heroic spirits, 6 out of 9 in the previous generation dying in battle. How many in each generation died a natural death? Instead, those ordinary members within the family seemed to be mostly protected and able to enjoy their old age. Being a prodigy, in the Li family, it seemed more of a misfortune, because they had to bear the weight of the entire Li family on their shoulders. In this case, it would be better to inherit the spirit from a martial temple, at least to be free and easy. Li Tianyuan seemed to discern Li Hao's hesitation, a trace of coldness flashing in his eyes, and then his figure gradually faded away, leaving only his echoing voice. This child is talented but lacks determination. Let him consider it further. The other memorial tablets quivered slightly as if to bid farewell to the ancestor, before also becoming silent. Li Mushu was taken aback, then looked at Li Hao helplessly, but did not say more in front of the ancestral tablets. Instead, he stood up with a deep bow and then led Li Hao out of the family shrine. Seeing this, Li Hao felt an inexplicable sense of relief and followed Elder Mushu out. Before leaving, his gaze involuntarily glanced at the chessboard. He couldn't help it, possessing a chess heart. As Jian Wudao once said, among 1,000 weapons, a lover of swords will see the sword first. That is only the stage of affection, let alone when it takes hold of the heart. Among 10,000 things, Li Hao would notice the chessboard at first glance. Li Tianyuan's heroic spirit, however, did not get angry, but calmly looked at Li Hao and slowly said, "Indeed, it is not fair, but do you know why I would have talents eligible to succeed? The ancestral spirits in the family shrine endure such injustices and make such heart's oaths. The Li family indeed has a family shrine and many ancestral heroic spirits, but not every member of the Li family is eligible to inherit these spirits. Their standards are quite high." Li Hao shook his head. "I don't know. It is for continuation." Li Tianyuan spoke slowly. The first heart's oath is to prevent gifted members of the family from becoming spoiled and arrogant, disregarding the lives of the ordinary and mediocre within the clan, even to the point of breaking away from the family after ascending with the resources of the clan and seeking their fortune recklessly. Therefore, this restriction may seem unfair to the talented, but at most it is a minor grievance, yet the benefit is that it can sustain the family, passing down the legacy from generation to generation. Li Hao thought it over. From the perspective of the ancestors, this was Indie Elder, black piece on the 7th line, 13th spot can win, he said. After speaking, Li Hao followed his second uncle out of the family shrine. Outside, it seemed to have started to drizzle, a thin, unending rain. Li Mushu sighed. It was the perfect time for fishing, with the lake assimilating fresh water and the demon fish liking to come up for air. But at the moment, he was not in the mood. Don't overthink, just reflect on it yourself. Li Muxiu knew Li Hao was playful, unwilling to be bound, and couldn't talk him into it. The boy was too young and occasionally willful. Li Hao nodded. The elder himself had inherited the spirit in the family shrine, which showed that, despite seeming carefree, he was deeply concerned for the Li family. Inside the shrine, the old man with the long eyebrows withdrew his gaze. He was not familiar with Li Hao, nor did he care how Hao felt since he would come back eventually. As his eyes fell back on the chessboard, his fingers gently pinched a piece about to make a move when he suddenly let out a soft exclamation. Chapter 37. Establishing a soul with heaven and earth. A year later, by the edge of Blackwater Demon Lake, the aroma of fish soup wafted into the air. The two elders sat next to a large pot with their bowls and chopsticks, and Feng Boping followed the customary sip of soup before eating. He scooped up a spoonful of fish soup and slowly savored it, not being able to help but exclaim, "This kid's cooking skills could almost rival those of the Imperial Kitchen. Tesk, I've been eating it for a year and still haven't gotten tired of it, which is really strange." Li Mushu was also surprised. He had not expected Li Hao to possess such remarkable culinary talent, a skill that was getting better and better. "Feng, have you ever eaten from the Imperial Kitchen?" Li Hao asked with a smile. "I've stolen and tasted the case." And the Li family's 1,000-year existence, unextinguished and not feared by the royal family, is due to the Second Heart's oath. Li Tianyuan spoke calmly. Originally, there were 12 divine generals who campaigned with the founding emperor. Now, in the Dayu Divine General Mansion, there are only 5 seats, of which 2 rose in recent hundreds of years. The descendants of those old fellows from the past have long been obliterated by the sands of time, and the remaining ones have concealed their identities, their whereabouts unknown. These Two Hearts oaths may seem like restrictions, like chains, but in reality, they are for the continuation of the bloodline. Otherwise, with the Li family's 1,000 years of accumulated military merits, its connections, the number of generals, and the prestige within the army, how could the royal family dare to empower them so readily, and why wouldn't they use imperial skill to weaken and harm us? Hearing this, Li Hao was momentarily stunned. From the perspective of this old ancestor, it had indeed been achieved. The benefits outweighed the drawbacks. For a divine general lineage to continue for 1,000 years with just a casual remark, its difficulty was beyond what ordinary people could imagine. Perhaps it was because the royal family knew that the Li family's top talents would inherit the ancestral spirits in the family shrine and had these Two Hearts oaths that they allowed the Li family its current glory. Feng Boping's face, though aged, bore a hint of a mischievous smile, reminiscing as he smacked his lips. That half a bowl of leftover soup even had my saliva in it. I wonder which concubine ended up with it. "You old thief. If you had served it to Emperor Yu, you would have lost your head," Li Mushu said, clearly not amused. He had some understanding of his old friend's audacious escapades and found them incredibly bold. Li Hao couldn't help but laugh. He knew this. Saint of Thieves spared nothing and no one. Last time, the old man even tried to give him a silk scarf thin as a cicada's wing, supposedly used by some sex saintess. It was only when his second elder chased the old man down half a river with a shoe that he gave up on gifting the scarf. This had become one of Li Hao's regrets. He felt that sometimes the second elder meddled a bit too much. Life's pleasures must be fully enjoyed. After all, you have to try everything, Feng Boping said cheerfully. Li Hao also picked up his bowl and began to eat, listening to the elder's banter. Suddenly, an idea struck him, and words appeared before his eyes. "You have comprehended the spirit of cooking." Li Hao's eyes glinted briefly before returning to normal, the revelation falling within his expectations. Since his cooking skill reached the 3rd tier at the fastest speed, he had sought ways to deepen his involvement, often visiting the kitchen to communicate and learn from the chefs. These chefs, upon meeting Li family's young master, the favored genius dared not neglect him. Though the matter was extremely odd, they were completely open and exhaustive in sharing their knowledge with Li Hao. Through deep conversations with the chefs, Li Hao's horizons had broadened immensely. He learned of the vastness of the culinary arts, which were no less nuanced than chess tao. An array of ingredients, various seasonings, heat control, culinary techniques, removing fishiness, and countless other methods. These revelations gradually made Li Hao fall in love with cooking, exploring it like a vibrant new world. Unconsciously, he moved beyond the phase of cooking for experience and genuinely grew fond of the culinary arts. Even without the incentive of gaining experience points, he would take opportunities to show off his cooking by preparing various dishes. Lately, with the confectionaries being delivered to Mountain and River Courtyard, he would taste each carefully. If they were made poorly, he would even overturn them and call the cook responsible to offer his personal criticism. Once it entered his heart, he inevitably became earnest and strict. Just like casual gamers in video games who wouldn't mind losing, but those who would rage upon defeat were usually the ones who seriously sought victory. Now, with the prompt of having comprehended the spirit of cooking, Li Hao didn't feel too overjoyed. After dedicating himself to something, he became indifferent to the outcomes, as it had been with his earlier understanding of chess spirit. Nevertheless, with this state of mind, he can now attempt to break through to the fourth stage of Control Path. The three chatted leisurely, finishing their meal and drinks. Li Hao picked some choice bones to feed to the little white fox by his side. The little white fox was a year and a half old, still petite and delicate, its coat lustrous, snow white. Li Hao had been feeding it spirit fruits infused with medicinal properties, along with its daily fish soup, setting it on a path of cultivation, reaching the 5th level of Power Passage Realm. From a wild fox in the mountains, it was now halfway to becoming a demon with a slight demonic aura. If it could reach the Zhou Tian realm, it would develop spiritual intelligence. Demons in the Soul Succession realm could already appear and vanish like ghosts. After finishing lunch, they went fishing for the afternoon. However, Li Hao only caught one fish demon at the 2nd layer of Zhou Tian realm. His luck in fishing was not good today. After packing up, he returned to Listening Rain Tower. Carrying the little white fox, Li Hao went back to Mountain and River Courtyard and shut himself in his room. Only then did he reveal his panel and, after some consideration, decided to use his new state of mind for a breakthrough in Control Path. Soon, his Control Path progressed from the 3rd to the 4th stage. The 3rd stage of Control Path had enabled rapid progress in opening his channels, and now at the 4th stage, he wondered whether he would gain new insights into the major channels and the chi circulation skill. As he finished allocating points, a rush of information flooded his mind. After a while, Li Hao slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were clear and bright, with a hint of astonishment. The world he saw seemed to have undergone some marvelous changes, and the deep insights in his mind told him that this universe was far more wonderful than what he had seen before. The world was alive with spirit. Demons and monsters gain insight from the stars, the sun, and the moon. Soul succession, with the blessing of the soul's intention, inherits not only the soul's intent, but must also abide by certain agreements. Humans may inherit from other humans, from demons, or from myriad races. Likewise, humans can also receive the inheritance of myriad races, the spirits of mountains and specters, the legacies of true dragons and phoenixes, or even the inheritance of the stars, the sun, the moon, and the very earth itself. Seeing many martial arts secrets within Listening Rain Tower, and with his own numerous cultivation methods, Li Hao suddenly felt an epiphany. To inherit from humans, one must carry on their intentions. To inherit from demons, one must carry on their nature. But to inherit from the heaven and earth, one must carry on their profundity. I will establish my soul with heaven and earth. Li Hao's eyes blazed with intense light. He activated his myriad attributes, enveloping his flesh. Unless he himself made a large commotion with his punches and kicks, others would not be able to detect it. Then, the chi force in his body surged through his major channels, with the yin and yang dual pulse emerging, converging at the top of his head. In an instant, his body's strength crazily surged, containing a terrifying force within. This force seemed as though it would burst forth from his body, breaking through that elusive barrier of nothingness. He wanted to connect with heaven and earth, to question the sky, the earth, and borrow that bit of strength. As if sensing Li Hao's intense will, a vast and terrifying pressure enveloped him like an actual mountain crashing down, causing all his bones to crackle with stress, some unable to bear the weight of the world, heavier than Mount Tai. Li Hao's eyes reddened, and he roared in his heart. The terrifying power of the yin and yang dual pulse erupted, and in an instant, his chi force doubled, reaching nearly 10 million caddies. That boundless willpower seemed to be lifted up by sheer force. But then, it was heavily suppressed again. Li Hao's body bent, and his feet deeply embedded into the floorboards. He clenched his teeth, knowing that relying solely on chi force was not enough, as he had not glimpsed the essence of heaven and earth. What were the true features of heaven and earth? It's the sky, The white clouds, the mountains and rivers, the myriad things on Earth, all parts of the world, but not the complete picture of the world. And he needed to stand his soul upon heaven and earth. What form would that world take in his heart? In Li Hao's mind emerged a Buddhist martial art from the 7th floor of the Listening Rain Tower, within which there was a line of Buddhist scripture. Buddha has no form. If even the Buddha has no form, how could heaven and earth have a form? I stand within this world. I am the form reflected by this world. A sudden burst of light exploded in Li Hao's eyes. His spirituality and chi force seemed to surge out together, breaking through an invisible checkpoint and reaching directly into the world. All of his chi force gathered and condensed his essence, energy, and spirit above his body, vaguely manifesting a shadow that was his own likeness. Establishing his own form as the form of the world, establishing his soul with the world as its foundation. At that moment, Li Hao stepped into the soul succession realm. It seemed an endless strength flowed through the world, through the voids in all directions, pouring into his body. Every curtain in the room was shaking violently, yet the doors and windows were shut. Where was this wind coming from? In the courtyard, within the pavilion. As Li Hao embarked on his cultivation, Li Fu no longer followed him like a shadow, but they still resided in the same courtyard. At this moment, he was playing chess in the courtyard, not because he enjoyed it, but because Li Hao once strongly invited him, teaching him, so that now in his leisure, it seemed the only pleasure he could find. He was engrossed in a game with Zhao, fighting a battle across the chessboard. If Li Hao were to see the game, he would only have one comment: amateurish pecking. Suddenly, both men seemed to pause in their move, involuntarily looking toward a certain direction. An inexplicable sense of shock, as though something magnificent was awakening, filled them with astonishment, as if it was the misconception of a divine premonition. What was this thing? The next moment, both stopped their game and rushed towards Li Hao's room, for an abnormal event surely meant the presence of a demon. As they burst through the door in haste, they saw the room in disarray, with vases that sat on the edge of shelves already fallen and shattered on the floor. And there was Li Hao, his legs embedded in the wooden planks, breathing faintly as if he had practiced a vigorous technique. What's going on? Seeing that there was no ambush, the two men relaxed and immediately hastened to Li Hao's side. Li Hao had already calmed the impact of the power from entering the soul succession realm, and myriad attributes hid his extraneous aura. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Li Hao exhaled and said, "I was just practicing." "You brat, why not go practice in the courtyard?" Li Fu said irritably, yet without suspicion. Li Hao's body refinement in the Zhou realm was hardly a secret, and he was aware of it, although the specific details were unclear to him. "I just had a sudden insight," Li Hao explained. "Well, that's quite good." Zhao laughed. Although the vases on the floor were centuries old and quite precious, as long as Li Hao made progress in his training, everything was worth it. Having reassured the two men, Li Hao continued to savor the power of the soul succession realm in his room, which was far superior to the Zhou realm. No wonder it was said that only those who reached the soul succession realm were eligible to be the guardians of a city, and at this moment, he was only 9 years old, yet already capable of commanding a city. After entering the soul succession realm, Li Hao's life remained as usual. Day by day, he ate and drank, either going out fishing, drawing, or playing chess in the courtyard, or running to the kitchen to cook. As time went by, the young master started coming up with new ideas, learning poetry and playing the qin, seemingly ever more determined to drift away from proper pursuits. Time flew by, spring went, and autumn came. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. The Qingyuan era, year 14. That year, Li Hao turned 14. Chapter 38, Tan Palace Academy. The Qingyuan era was the newly established reign title in the year Li Hao was born, highlighting the deep favor bestowed upon the Li family by Emperor Yu. This dynasty, which had stood for over 3,000 years, was still like a majestic lion. Though it had gradually aged and weakened, its mighty presence profoundly protected most of the land in peace, preventing the daring demons from wantonly setting foot within the territory and ensuring the tribute-paying vassal states continued their annual offerings. In that year, on the Yunzhou border within the secluded Valley mountain range, the 86-year-old veteran general Xianxia embarked on a campaign amid the cheers of the border shepherd, leading more than 30,000 royal cavalry. In just 3 days, he annihilated over 100,000 tiger leopard demon clansmen that plagued the border, extending the territory by 1,000 miles, his fame spreading across 19 provinces. That same year, a 12-year-old prodigy known as the Bright Moon Sword braved the 9 heavenly gates and, as a direct disciple, entered the Gantao Palace to listen to the teachings of the sage, becoming renowned throughout the world. Also in that year, a secluded old grandmaster who had retreated for 30 years atop Wanfeng Mountain descended to engage in a duel by the shore of Redwater Lake, drawing onlookers from all over. The final outcome, however, remained unknown to all. Now, in the deep of October's autumn, the withered yellow leaves covered the ground of Qingzhou. The sacred training ground of Qingzhou City, known as the Leap Immortal Gate Tan Palace Academy, also opened its doors that had been sealed for 6 years. Once the news broke out, it swept through the provinces. Countless young talents, heirs, and princesses swarmed from all over the world like shoals of fish, racing towards this opportunity for fame and fortune. Meanwhile, in a small courtyard of the Divine General Mansion not far from Tan Palace Academy in Qingzhou City, a young man sat leisurely. He listened to the sound of the fluttering leaves in the courtyard, brewed a pot of green tea, and quietly played a game of chess. As if the hustle and bustle and the struggle taking place outside the courtyard were unrelated to him. "Young master, you've lost again." The last move of the black piece sealed off the white piece's final escape route, a checkmate. The young man picked up the teacup beside him, took a gentle sip, and said with a smile. His lips were red and teeth white. His eyes shone like bright stars, clear and profound. His face, still bearing a touch of youthful softness, carried defined and yet gentle line. The skin was pale, as if long shielded from the sun, with a hint of moon-like coolness. His fingers, holding the chess piece, were slender and strong with translucent nails, free of any impurity. After he spoke, the corners of the mouth of the old man sitting across the chessboard twitched. He scrutinized the chessboard with a frown, and eventually, unable to find a way out, frustration made him toss the white pieces back into the chess chi box. "You lad, your skills in chess Tao are becoming increasingly exquisite." Li Qingzheng, referred to as the Fifth Master, said even though he was praising the young man, his eyes reflected a deep resentment. Having immersed himself in it for the better part of his life, his proudest and most satisfying skill in chess Tao was continuously defeated by this youth recently. Winning the occasional game only added to his irritation. "It's all thanks to your good training, Fifth Master," the young man, who was Li Hao, said with a modest chuckle. "You cheeky boy," Li Qingzheng glared at him, not in good spirits, intending to play another round. But then he eyed the current game and felt somewhat deflated. He still hadn't figured out how he lost this last game. At this moment, the sound of crunching dry leaves underfoot arose, and a snowy white figure swiftly darted over and jumped into the young man's arms without a word. It was a white fox. The white fox had reddish-orange ears, which added a touch of liveliness to its appearance. Li Hao rubbed the white fox nuzzling in his arms and frowned. "Why do you smell of medicinal herbs again? Where did you sneak off to eat this time?" At these words, the white fox burrowed deeper into Li Hao's embrace, as if trying to avoid answering. Just then, Li Hao heard footsteps and looked up to see a figure in green, briskly approaching. It was a 16 or 17-year-old maid with bright eyes and white teeth. Quite pretty. Panting, she arrived outside the gazebo, greeted Li Qingzheng with a bow, and then hastened to Li Hao. "Young master, Xiaoru has been to the Great Lady's kitchen again. She knocked over the Great Lady's beauty-preserving medicinal soup, and now they are searching for the culprit all over the Eternal Spring Court." Li Hao was speechless, dug the little head out from his embrace, and said with a lack of patience, "I told you not to be mischievous everywhere. Do you want to be spanked again?" The small head of the white fox struggled to turn away, not daring to meet Li Hao's eyes, apparently aware of the trouble it had caused. "If you keep this up, I'll hand you over to the Great Lady to deal with you properly, and she'll shave off all your fur," Li Hao threatened. The thought seemed to scare the white fox, causing it to tremble, and with a pitiful look, it turned its head to gaze at Li Hao. "You're already in the Zhoutian realm, why can't you talk yet?" Li Hao said, looking at the pathetic eyes of the white fox and feeling rather helpless. He turned to address the maid, Qingzhi. Later on, apologize to the Great Lady on my behalf and send over a tray of the perilla cakes I made. And, have you bought today's cotton jade pastries? Qingzhi muttered under her breath. It's always me who has to go. Every time it makes trouble, I'm the one who gets scolded. What? Nothing. I'll go buy the cotton jade pastries right away. Qingji said quickly, then ran off swiftly like a streak of cloud. This little maid is becoming more and more unruly, Li Hao said, lifting his cup of tea and shaking his head helplessly. Li Qingzheng gave him a glance. How many in your courtyard are actually serious? Li Hao almost spat out his tea, looking at the old man speechlessly. Fifth, Grandpa. Those words shouldn't be said carelessly. Li Qingzheng snorted coldly. The house servants stand without poise, and the maids walk around frantically. Go see the other courtyards, where everything is prim and proper. This little demon fox too, always causing mischief everywhere, sooner or later she'll be caught and stewed. It's all because the top beam is not straight and the bottom beams are crooked, mostly because of you. You had a bright future ahead, but you chose to create a mess. Could our family's ancestors really be inferior to a demon dragon? At this point, he was so angry that he was blowing his beard and glaring. Clearly, even after several years, this matter still troubled him deeply. In the year he turned 8, Li Hao could have entered the Soul Succession realm, but he himself delayed it for a year. As a result, when the ancestors in the Ancestral Hall couldn't wait any longer and sent for him to find the boy, they discovered that Li Hao had already inherited a soul. By using body-refining techniques to slay a flood dragon, he inherited a demon dragon soul. Although it was a dragon soul that he inherited, how could a mere dragon compare with the Li family's illustrious lineage of ancestors? Moreover, demon souls are prone to inherit their nature, making it hard for him to avoid a temperament of slaughter and brutality upon inheriting a demon soul. Fortunately, over the years, Li Hao hasn't shown this side of him. Mostly it's due to playing chess with me all the time and being influenced by me. He stroked his beard, feeling satisfied. However, that demon dragon soul has lowered Li Hao's qualifications for soul inheritance, dooming him to be considered just above average within the soul succession realm. He might seem sufficient in the face of most in the soul succession realm, but compared to the cream of the crop from various factions, he would look quite inferior. After all, others manifest the soul of an ancestor from the Four Stands realm, while we have a demon dragon. And the ancestors of others have slain countless demon dragons before. Just the dragon slaying momentum that comes with their soul might be enough to scare Li Hao down. Thinking of this matter filled Li Qingzheng with anger. The ancestors in the Ancestral Hall were also uncontrollably furious. As a son of the Li family, yet inheriting a demon dragon's soul, where did that leave the faces of our venerable ancestors? There was even an ancestor who proposed to punish Li Hao severely, lock him in the Li family's dungeon, and let him thoroughly learn his lesson. Even Li Mushu, who is often by Li Hao's side acting as a half caretaker, was rebuked one by the ancestors, but my second brother deserved it. Just because my second brother coddled and indulged the boy too much and didn't care about anything, that's why he became so unruly. If it weren't for Li Hao's skill in playing chess, I would need to give this boy a harsh lesson myself. Thinking this, Li Qingzheng's anger at the chessboard in front of him flared up even more. How did I lose? Since stepping out of the Ancestral Hall that year, he felt that his decades-long peaceful heart realm was becoming increasingly disturbed. I feel pretty good. The servants are comfortable, and so am I. Li Hao gave the old man a sheepish smile. With you being so lax, your servants are lax too. Wait until your father comes back, see how he'll deal with you. Li Qingzheng snorted coldly. Li Hao said, what if he stops me from playing chess with you? He wouldn't dare. Li Qingzheng's eyes widened immediately. Li Hao chuckled, and just then, another set of footsteps approached, though the sound didn't belong to the girl Qingji. He looked in surprise and saw a familiar facing Shuojin from Eternal Spring Court. Only now, after several years had passed, the girl who used to be young had developed an air of graceful charm. Following her were two maidens, with bowed heads and demure expressions, walking silently, obviously much more proper than those in his own courtyard, and also much more hard-working. Seeing that fifth grandpa was also present, Shuijian quickly bowed and greeted him with respect, and while she was surprised, she couldn't help but glance at Li Hao. Everyone in the mansion knew that this young master of Mountain and River Courtyard was neglectful in his studies, yet he managed to get along quite well with both of the elder lords. Young master, the lady has sent me to inform you that Tan Palace Academy is open for the year. This is the invitation sent by the academy to the mansion, and the lady asked me to deliver a copy to you. Shuijin said, bowing her head in reverence as she handed a black and white double fish-adorned invitation to Li Hao. Although she might not have much respect for Li Hao in her heart, her demeanor was impeccable. Li Hao, aware of the girl's exceptional handling of matters, took the invitation with a smile and then casually tossed it aside on the mat, saying, "Thank you, Miss Shuijian." Shuijian glanced down and saw that the precious invitation, sought after by martial artists all over the world, was carelessly placed to the side. Thinking of the young master's character, it was as the lady had predicted. Chapter 39, Honors and Shortbread. The lady also asked me to remind the young master, please make sure to attend, as this is a rare opportunity. With a respectful and gentle tone, Shuijian said, "If the young master doesn't go, the lady said she would ground you for 3 months, take away all your painting paper, poetry and books, guqin, and also forbid you from entering the kitchen again." As she spoke, a strange feeling rose from the bottom of her heart, wondering how one could have such a broad range of hobbies. This young master was indeed a man of talent. Moreover, such a precious opportunity that people would scramble for outside, yet here she was, having to persuade this young master with great effort. It was indeed quite inconceivable. Isn't this punishment too harsh? Li Hao was somewhat at a loss for words and asked, "Is this really a request or a threat?" Shuijian looked up, her lovely face displaying innocence as she blinked her eyes. Fine, I understand," Li Hao sighed. Shuijian's lips curled into a smile. The young master was definitely a character. She curtsied gracefully, said goodbye to Fifth Master, and then took her leave from Li Hao with great respect. "You should listen to that girl Jianlan and go," said Li Qingzheng indifferently after Shuijian had left. "Is it for that peerless technique from Black and White Hall?" Li Hao inquired. As one of the 3 sacred places in Qingzhou City, Black and White Hall was mentioned alongside Listening Rain Tower. Although Li Hao had heard from Second Master that the two were not on the same level, Black and White Hall had something of its own too, like that peerless technique it possessed. Exactly, that peerless technique is worth being included in the 7 floors, Li Qingzheng said calmly. Moreover, the teaching standard of Tan Palace Academy is not bad, and you should rein in your nature. That's the real purpose, isn't it? Li Hao muttered with a smirk. Before long, the maid Qingji bounced back with a skip in her step. Seeing her empty-handed, Li Hao asked, "What about the flaky pastries?" "Didn't manage to get them." Qingji bowed formally to Li Qingzheng before speaking to Li Hao. I asked, "Miss?"
Wayne next door, and Uncle Lou has gone to Tan Palace Academy to set up his stall at the fair there. They say it's crowded with talents from all 19 provinces, and the business is booming. Besides Uncle Lou, many other vendors from nearby streets have also gone there to set up their stalls. Disc! Li Hao inhaled sharply and couldn't help but smile wryly. It seemed he had no choice but to make a trip there. Although his cooking skills had reached the 6th stage by now, Uncle Lou had been making that cottony, fragrant, flaky pastry for decades. He could make it himself, but somehow lacked that indescribable flavor, not quite perfect. On the other side, the old master watched Li Hao's resigned expression and chuckled, twirling his beard. "Young master, when I came back, young master Yuan Zhao was waiting for you on the Jiaoshi carriage outside. He said he's waiting and you should get ready quickly to go to Tan Palace Academy together," said Qingji. All right then. With things hadn't come this far, Li Hao could only get moving, for the sake of the flaky pastries. He asked Qingji to get his outerwear ready and head out in casual attire. "Grandfather, I'm taking a trip and won't see you off," Li Hao said to the old master. "Go ahead, we'll see how I defeat you when you return," Li Qingzheng said with a laugh. "You better think it through well," Li Hao thought to himself with a secret chuckle, taking along with him Fu and Qingji as they stepped out. Qingji had entered the mansion 3 years ago. She was said to be a young lady of a small family that had fallen on hard times and ended up being sold into servitude, eventually making her way to the Divine General Mansion. Li Hao had heard about her some calligraphy skills, which was why he had her brought to Mountain and River Courtyard, given the previous assassination attempt. Qingji's entry to the mansion went through layers of scrutiny and also a medicinal examination by Li Fu to confirm nothing was amiss before she was officially transferred to Mountain and River Courtyard. Later, favored by Li Hao, she was gradually brought to his side to become a personal maidservant, becoming one of Li Hao's more trusted individuals.
Outside the mansion, a squad of the Li family's private soldiers had already taken their positions, with 5 Yanbei Hydra lions, whose bodies were as large as elephants, harnessed in front and behind a huge carriage, exuding an air of grandeur. Since Li Hao and the other members of the 3rd generation of the Li family, aside from a few who had already inherited titles, had no official achievements to their names, there was no parasol fitted on the carriage. However, the carriage body adorned with carved dragons and painted phoenixes still radiated an aura of nobility, and when combined with the imposing, savage bodies of the 5 Hydra lions, their presence was nothing short of formidable. Stepping into the carriage cabin, Li Hao saw 2 men and a woman who had been waiting inside. They were of a similar age to himself, specifically Li Yuanzhao and the sibling pair, Li Yun. Among the direct descendants of the 3rd generation who had trained together in the martial training field, there were only the 5 of them, including the children of the 8th Mystery. However, The children of the 8th mistress had been spoiled by her since childhood, and their relationship with others was extremely estranged. They were not sociable, a trait that had been apparent from the past and had become even more obvious over time. Nonetheless, with the passage of time, many things had changed. How? Upon seeing Li Hao, Li Yuanzhao immediately called out with a smile and patted the seat beside him, inviting Li Hao to join him. Now, 13 years old, his body had become even more rotund, making him look quite comical. His squinty eyes resembled 2 slits on a round steamed bun. Both of Li Yuanzhao's parents had passed away, and as an orphan among the 3rd generation, he had been fostered in the courtyard of the 4th mistress since childhood. It was said that he was greatly favored by the 4th mistress, which explained his well-fed appearance. At his enthusiastic call, the siblings looked over with slightly furrowed brows but did not greet Li Hao. As they grew older and learned more at the martial training field or were influenced by certain other factors, these siblings gradually decreased their visits to the mountain and river courtyard. Since Li Hao turned 11, they had not come at all. When Li Hao accompanied the elder to go fishing, he would sometimes run into them, but it seemed that the siblings had lost the enthusiasm of the old days and started to avoid him. Li Hao had taken the initiative to greet them several times, but after repeated occurrences, he realized what was happening. He said nothing about it, harboring no resentment or blame, and simply treated them as strangers from then on. After all, as the years went by, not only the people around him changed, but so did he himself. 5 years had brought about many changes. For his sake, the 5th master had left the ancestral hall, where he had been in seclusion for many years, and often visited the courtyard to play chess with him and relieve his boredom. Whereas the courtyard, once bustling with people eager to hear stories, had gradually emptied, leaving only Li Yuanzhao, who remained as enthusiastic as ever about coming to the mountain and river courtyard. Sometimes, when there were no stories to hear, he'd bring a small stool to sit next to Li Hao, watching him paint alone or chatting idly with the 5th master over a game of chess. Moving on, the letter from the faraway Jian Pavilion, thousands of miles to the south, had not arrived for a long time. The last time they received a letter was a year ago. However, according to the agreement made in that letter, the young girl would have completed her training and descended the mountain by this time next year. Thinking that he would see that little tale in another year, a tender smile couldn't help but appear in Li Hao's eyes as he moved over and took the half of the seat offered by Li Yuanzhao. Jining, why don't you call out to Hao? Once Li Hao sat down, Li Yuanzhao looked at the unresponsive siblings beside him and called out to the sister. The once neatly dressed and obedient Li Jining had grown into a slender and delicate young girl, but her once cheerful and innocent eyes now carried a touch of calmness and determination. She glanced at Li Hao, saw the casual and warm smile still on his face, furrowed her brow, but said nothing. Beside her, Li Yun's expression darkened, and he addressed the coachman up front. "Let's set off, Ming." "Yes, young master." The carriage started moving slowly. Aside from some initial jerkiness, the ride became stable and smooth with no jolts whatsoever. Li Yuanzhao, although we have the invitations from Tan Palace Academy, my mother has said we should rely on our own abilities to enter the academy and not depend on the family for everything, lest outsiders mock us. Li Yun said sternly with a cold expression. Chapter 40 Prestige. Of course.
Li Yuanzhao frowned and said, "Do you think I can't rely on myself? That I need others' help? Why don't we go back and spar again, since we haven't turned a winner last time?" Li Yun snorted coldly. In the past 2 years, his sparring with Li Yuanzhao had been almost equal, hard to determine superior. However, speaking of their ages, he was slightly at a disadvantage. After all, the latter was a year younger than him. When it came to bone measurement and the innate talent of their battle bodies, he was also at a disadvantage, his rank being 7th layer, while his sister and Li Yuanzhao were both 8th layer. Therefore, his words were not targeted at Li Yuanzhao, but more at that other person, the one who had later made him understand reason, and secretly fume with anger. The thought of having been brutally beaten up by a good-for-nothing made him extremely angry, but fortunately, the incident was only known to the heavens, the earth, and between Li Hao and himself. Over the years, seeing Li Hao would make his teeth itch with irritation. If it weren't for the constant presence of the 2nd elder and the 5th elder by Li Hao's side, he wouldn't let go of any chance to take revenge. Seeing Li Yun shooting a cold glare at Li Hao, Li Yuanzhao, despite his youth, was not foolish, especially after years with Hao, hearing all sorts of extraordinary and marvelous stories, which include tales of ghosts and demons, as well as stories about the viciousness of human nature. Although he couldn't fully understand them yet, he was still a bit more mature than his peers. Because of this, he had understood Li Yun's implication from the start, and intentionally deflected the topic onto himself. Seeing Li Yun only daring to make veiled criticisms, he couldn't be bothered to argue seriously, to avoid making everyone uncomfortable, and smilingly said to Li Hao, "Hao, I heard that Shuer will be back in a year." "Yeah." Li Hao's lips curved into a faint smile. "I heard from my master that one must reach the Divine Travel Realm to leave the Sword Cottage." Could it be that Shuer will break through to the Divine Travel Realm by next year? Li Yuanzhao asked curiously. The Divine Travel Realm was the domain of 4th realm warriors who could delve into tigers' dens to slay demons and to sell evil. In the borderlands, they could carve out a path of blood, taking on the role of military officers, ranking just below generals. You should know, by next year, Bian Rushui will only be 15 years old. Such progress, even among the top talents with 8th layer battle bodies, is considered outstanding. Many of those celebrated figures across the world possess 8th layer battle bodies, which is just a starting point for top talents, a limit set by bone measurement. And what follows, the various opportunities, efforts, and natural comprehension abilities, will further widen this gap. Off to the side, Li Yun perked up at the mention of swear, his eyes instinctively glancing towards Li Hao. The seed that had once sprouted in his young heart seemed to stir again. However, upon thinking of the divine travel realm, the youth's expression darkened again, weighed down by sadness. With his current understanding, he knew just how unreachable that distance was. That's right, Li Hao nodded. One in the divine travel realm could have the assurance of life whilst rowing the Jianghu. He glanced at a shadow not far off, its expression complex. He felt amused, and also thought the boy deserved a beating for still harboring thoughts of rivalry. It had been too long since he'd been put in his place, daring to hold a grudge. To reach the divine travel realm at 15 is truly impressive. If she were to come to Tan Palace Academy, I bet the palace master would personally receive her and take her directly as a direct disciple of the inner palace. Li Yuanzhao couldn't help admiring aloud. They were merely at cycle heaven realm perfection, still a bit away from a soul succession stage. This time, they joined Tan Palace Academy with the intention of succeeding souls of ancient and valiant figures of Tan Palace. This was the instruction of their mother, for reasons unknown to them. Her master is the Sword Saint after all. It's incomparable, Li Hao said reassuringly. In truth, these few were also geniuses. The only reason they hadn't entered Around Mountains was due to an unspoken rule in the Li family's main branch. One could enter Around Mountain, but only as a direct disciple of a master of the Sword Saint's caliber. Otherwise, they would practice in the family estate until reaching a certain level of cultivation, and then join various major forces to stand out and showcase the majesty of the younger generation of the Li family. Such standards were only for a main branch. It was different for children of concubines. As soon as their foundations were firm, they would join various famous mountains and mentors, and had already made a name for Li family in all kinds of forces. Even with just the children of concubines, the true Dragon had not yet emerged, they had already become young leaders in various second and third tier forces. This also added great prestige to the Li family's reputation in the Jianghu, extending far beyond the military camps along the borders. Indeed, Li Yuanzhao sighed. To be taught by a Sword Saint level master, that was something to envy. At the very least, it called for a starting point with 8-layer battle body talent, which was the minimum requirement. At this time, the Zhao Liang led the way, and the enormous carriage, comparable to a house on wheels, traversed the streets of Qingzhou City, known to all that belonged to the Divine General Mansion. Bystanders made way, pointing and whispering amongst themselves. One glance at the direction, and they knew. The carriage most likely carried the true dragons of the Li family, head for cultivation at Tan Palace Academy. Those martial artists and sons and daughters of prestigious families from various states who would hurry over, when their carriages met the demon energy emitted by the Zhao Lion, became restless and uneasy. Halting in place, some even bolted crazily towards the roadside in fear, unwilling to obstruct the path and unrestrainable even by a coachman's earnest tugging. The dignity of the Divine General Mansion was fully displayed in this moment. Before long, the carriage came to a stop, and Ming, the coachman, informed them in a gentle voice that they had arrived outside of Tan Palace Academy. Tan Palace Academy was not far from the Divine General Mansion, practically neighbors. As the carriage settled, Li Yuanzhao and the other two's gazes slightly intensified.
Although they were also considered prodigies with extraordinary talents, they normally cultivated within the mansion and had never truly shown themselves in front of others. And given their youthful nature, a trace of nervousness was unavoidable at this moment. Li Hao, however, didn't feel much. Once the carriage stopped, he rose leisurely and casually lifted the curtain of the carriage. Light poured onto his face, and at the same time, a multitude of bustling and noisy sounds surged forward, flooding into the carriage as if lifting the curtain had uncovered an era of human flourishment. When the three inside returned to their senses, they saw Li Hao standing gracefully at the carriage door amidst the cacophony, quietly surveying the surroundings with his usual faint smile, appearing completely at ease. Li Jining's eyes narrowed slightly, as if a flicker of past memories surged forth, but she quickly regained her composure, and the corner that had been lifted was folded back down once more. Only when the three of them got up and exited the carriage did they behold the bustling scene outside. The vast square was packed with figures, shoulder to shoulder, the majority being energetic young men and women bearing swords, knives, and spears. In the crowd, there were also well-dressed young men with attendants at their side, keeping all but the closest away. And amidst the throng, the young women in rainbow garments and feathered dresses, with graceful maidens holding umbrellas to shield them from the blazing sun, stood out conspicuously, a striking presence. Looking around, all one could see were densely packed young martial artists. Yet at this moment, those standing on the carriage instantly became the focal point of everyone's gaze. After all, the Zhao Lion carriage from the Divine General Mansion was too eye-catching. Dayu decreed that dragon-blooded beasts pulling carriages were to be used for imperial travel with 9 at most, 7 for princes, and 5 for marquises and 5th-rank officials. Scholars and renowned families were entitled to use 3 or 2, respectively. Commoners, the wealthy without official titles, could only use a single steed for their carriage, and it must not be of Zhao race with dragon blood. Though Li Hao and the others lacked official titles, being the sons of a marquis, they too could enjoy the glory of their forebears. Is that the Divine General Mansion? The Li family of Qingzhou City, the millennium-old Divine General Mansion, truly magnificent. That's 4 slots gone. I heard Tan Palace Academy has a limited number of spots. How infuriating. I, Lin Yan, will definitely lead my Lu Zhou branch of the Lin family to rise in this generation, contending with heaven and earth. They say there's a waste in the Li family this generation. I wonder if he came. A millennium of glory sparked envy and jealousy among the masses, and it stirred up even more ambition and eagerness in many young hearts amidst the noisy tumult. Li Yun, along with Li Yuanzhao and Li Jining, had tense expressions, appearing robust and calm on the surface, but their fingers were already sweating with revealed inner nervousness. Facing gazes that seemed as if they could scorch a person, Li Yun lingered no longer and with a cold expression uttered, "Let's go ahead." He then took his sister Li Zining and jumped down from the carriage, entering the crowd boldly like a tiger through a forest, amidst Ming's cautioning words for the young master to walk slowly and be careful. The surrounding people unconsciously made way, not out of respect for the youth, but for the surname behind him. "How? Let's go too," Li Yuanzhao said, swallowing nervously to Li Hao. Li Hao, however, tiptoed slightly and looked around, sniffing lightly. His eyes soon lit up as he said, "Let's go." With that, he jumped down from the carriage, and the onlookers parted, none daring to block the path of the fine-dressed young man. Li Yuanzhao hurriedly followed but grabbed Li Hao's sleeve after a few steps. "How? Aren't we going the wrong way?" "The Tan Palace Academy is over there." "I know," Li Hao responded without looking back, "but there is food ahead. Fame and status can wait, but food comes first indeed."